Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Rise of the Immortals trophy with me, your host, Guile. And today I'm very happy to bring you Game 2 in Pool 2. This will be the last Pool 2 match of Week 1, and probably one of the last times you'll see the combination of Roanoke's Abyss for the 2v2 and Ambush the Enemy for the 1v1s. And the match is going to be between the Smörebröts, and perhaps a native speaker to that language, I assume it's some kind of Germanic, will be able to tell me whether or not that's even remotely close to the pronunciation. The Smörebröts will be facing off against the Spiderpigs. So without further ado, let's boot up that first replay and see how they get on. Of course, going back to Roanoke's Abyss. And incidentally, I'm going to have to go with my feelings on this one and say that the advantage is going to be heavily with the Spiderpigs, the two tournament directors on that team. And you can see Kircher and Voodoo for the Spiderpigs, the two tournament directors. As I say, they're running significantly higher overall ratings. So you've got to fancy them to walk away with this one. You can see it's mainly a Seraphim affair again. After all, you'd be crazy not to go heavy Seraphim on this map, being as they are so heavily favored. So Voodoo going Seraphim in the 12 o'clock position, working with the stereotypical land and one air. And his teammate Kircher also going Seraphim over here to the left hand side. It does look like they're all talking German. Obviously Voodoo and Kircher both German, so I'd imagine Mag and Killer are as well. And that might explain the trouble I was having with the name. Mag down here on the bottom right, he's going to be going Seraphim as well. But Alleluia, breaking up the Seraphim party, Killer in the 6 o'clock position is going Aeon. Very nice to see a little bit of variation, even if it's only one player. All guys going one land, one air to start with. So no surprises there. It is a pretty staple start, especially for this map. Obviously, if you haven't noticed already, Seraphim very, very heavily favored on this map because of the floating artillery. There are so many islands that you can set up on, lots and lots of different places. You can get little manufacturing facilities up and swamp opponents' bases with T1 floating artillery. Very light, very inexpensive weapon. That's why it's so heavily utilized. So first scout planes out for Kircher. Going to be doing a little bit of a run, see what he can see. And looks like a similar tactic for Voodoo, or is he creating an interceptor straight off? Yeah, he's going for an interceptor straight off the bat, getting a little bit of air protection. Killer already has an inti out. So it's very much a game of cat and mouse. You've got to expect that your opponents are going to be trying to get engineers to these middle islands as soon as possible. So do you go for the interceptor first in the hopes of shooting down the transport full of engineers, which will give you the best advantage in getting there, or do you go for the scout plane that will help you spot that incoming transport first and hopefully give you the advantage on shooting it down, or do you get a bomber out nice and early and go for any engineers that will be creeping their way across over the water? It's very hit and miss. It relies on what your opponents are doing. You can see one transport getting shot down very early by Killer. Very nice pickup there. Also being attacked by one of Kircher's defending intis, but it couldn't deal with it in time, and it's quite a costly little loss there for Kircher in the early game, who's now moving his ACU down to that island to see if he can take command of it. But very nice little maneuver there from Killer. That definitely slows up Kircher's production, or at least his stratagem taking that island. Mag moving his ACU up to his middle island, and Voodoo is also going to do the same. He's actually managed to get a transport full of engineers he's going to bring over at the same time. It looks like that's going to make landfall first, so you've got to like Voodoo's chances of securing this island before Mag. Lots and lots of, and you see that stream of T1 light artillery that's so useful on this map. Pretty much everyone except Killer employing that. Killer sending a light transport across to this little island. Probably going to set up a few factories. Yeah, he is going to stop over here. Set up a few factories. No, he's completely changed his mind. How very erratic. But a little fracas going on over here on the right-hand side. Bomber getting shot down by Mag. You can see a factory up and running already for Voodoo. That is going to give him a huge advantage. Second one on the way. Lots of units coming in, and I don't like Mag's chances of holding on to this. He has got his ACU on the island, but he is behind the curve. That is going to be rather difficult. Voodoo's got a submarine out, obviously not able to do anything about the artillery, being as they float above the water and not on it. But Kocher now managing finally to get a airdrop of engineers over onto this island. Killer has got one engineer down there. He's shoving a radar station up. Has got a few more engineers as well, so he'll be able to start production of a few factories. Also bringing his commander across. So Killer for the moment have a lot more build power on this island than Kocher does. Mag taking a lot of fire on this side, pretty heavily outnumbered. He's down to about 40% HP, just below 4,000 hit points now. He has got some support of his own on that island, focusing pretty heavily on Voodoo's ACU. Needs to be careful though, because Voodoo's got a lot of frigates encircling this island. That's why you can see Mags moving towards the center of the island, but he's taken so much damage. He's down to 1,200 hit points. Voodoo sitting pretty on around the 40%, 50-40% mark of his HP, but Mag down to under 1,000 now. Slowly climbing up to the 900 hit point marks, but he's absolutely wedged in. He's got Navy on one side, lots of T1 artillery and Voodoo's ACU on the other. And he needs to be careful. He can't retreat now. He's got submarines bearing in. That is obviously his plan. Wants to get into the water, make its way to one of the other islands, but he's about to start taking some torpedo fire. You see the torpedoes going in. Has to turn back and get back onto land. So Mag absolutely cornered. No way out for him, and he goes down. You've got to like the Spiderpigs' chances of closing out this game. Kocher up and running on the left-hand island with 3 factories. Killer trying to get something done with just his ACU. Seems to have lost this battle in general as well, which is surprising because he had a lot more build power on this island. Can only assume got out-microed in some way. Currently trying to do some damage to these factories. But progress is slow. Kocher doing a very nice job of maintaining air superiority. And it would be a miracle if the Smörebröts could turn this around now. To 3,000 HP. And Voodoo just moving all of his forces down now. Probably going to take this island pretty soon. And it's literally just a waiting game now. Doing just enough to keep Killer's regen down. Interesting, he's not yielding, moving his comm into the water. Has got naval superiority for the moment, but I guess he's unaware of the location of Voodoo's units. He's got no eyes on them, really. It's the first contact he's had on that mini island with those interceptors. And it's just absolutely cornered now. See Voodoo taking advantage of this island, picking up the mass wrecks from Mag's base. Killer throws up the GG, knows he's beaten. It's going to be a question of how long his ACU holds out. A lot of Voodoo's navy now coming in to help secure the island, help corner the ACU. was an interesting attempt by Mag. It's obviously going up against someone of Voodoo's caliber. It's never easy. He didn't want to yield that island because you're essentially just exchanging a quick death if you lose the micro game in the ACU battle for a slow death if you actually just yield that island and give someone like Voodoo that much extra mass and map control. So he wanted to secure it, but Voodoo just a little bit better with the island, the setting up of the base, with the micro of his units, and of course Kurt just slightly better as well, while our attention was up at the other side of the screen. Despite having less build power when we left it, he had managed to establish the base and prevent Killer from doing the same. Surely just a matter of time now. You've got a few gunships in there, which you can do nothing about. Down to 2,000 HP. $1,000. Thinks about making a play for the water, but there really isn't any point. Why prolong it when it's clearly over? And there he goes. So, well played, Spiderpigs. Definitely a well-deserved victory. And that means game 1 goes to the Spiderpigs. We move on to the 1v1 section of the match. So we'll go ahead and boot that up. And that, of course, as I said earlier, is still on Ambush the Enemy. And we will take a look at who selected who in Game 2. Of course, I didn't mention it in my last videos. I'm sure my fellow casters have. It was actually a message from Napalm that reminded me about it last night. The losers of Game 1 chooses who faces off in the first 1v1 Game 2. So you can see that they've chosen Killer versus Kircher. They obviously feel that's the best matchup. That's what they want to do. Give themselves the best chance of evening up that match. I mean, it might leave them a slightly tougher match later on. You know, so I mean, that's their call. But you've still got to like the Spiderpigs for this one. Generally much more, well, higher rating, more experience. And I would very rarely bet against a team with Voodoo or Kocher in it, let alone when they're teamed up together. So we'll have to see how they manage. Both guys choosing UEF for this one. UEF obviously becoming a firm favourite for this kind of map. The defensive advantages around your own base and the opportunities for things like point defense creep, super useful. And first little light assault bot gets in, picks up a kill for Kocher. Killer working on, looks like he's going for the 2 factory, 1 air factory. Kocher has just queued up he's got the 1 factory, he's queued up 1 air factory, which he looks like he'll be going to after either this power gen or that one. Obviously, hydrocarbons in the middle of the map, so there are always going to be rows and rows of T1 power gens going up at the back of these guys' bases, which is always useful if you get a few bombing runs in. See if either guy manages to get air superiority early on. Killer taking an early little push with a few units trying to secure this right hand plateau for the minute, get some map control. And Kocher has done much the same on the left hand side. A couple of assault bots and a scout. Not going to do a huge amount of damage, but and a slight annoyance down the left, and gives him some scouting info. See these units of killers just moving up the right hand side. Scoring some minor victories against these light sentries for Kocher. Kocher now has his commander right in the middle of the map. He's got a radar station up. He's picked up a mass point. Going to get a factory going as well. If you can secure this mid, it's going to be pretty useful. Killer has his ACU near the middle also, but there's a bomber hovering around for Kircher. I'd like to see Killer do something about that, being as he's got an Inti or two hanging about in his base. He's going to move them now. Has a bomber of his own as well. Largely unchallenged up until now has been this little engineer. He's been constructing mass points up on this left plateau for Kircher. But now Kircher moving in a few strikers, seeing if he can make some progress on the right hand plateau. Numbers relatively even for these two, but it looks like Killer is going to walk away with the land advantage. Kircher just losing a few too many units to be able to hold, has to wait for some more reinforcements. So Killer getting a factory of his own up in the middle. See Kircher's factory for now just producing engineers, helping scoop up that mass that's very useful in the middle of the map, some big rocks. Very even Stevens on the right plateau. Meanwhile, on the left plateau, Killer has managed to force out Kircher completely. Kircher getting some T1 point defense up, trying to secure this center. A lot of units on the field now for Killer, pushing right. Definitely sensing this is where the majority of the battle is going to take place, and a few units for him on the left as well. So Kircher looking like he's got the middle, but potentially yielding the two plateaus. Although Kircher has made it up to Tech 2, you can see there's a pillar on the field now. That is going to make a lot of difference. Really significant increase in firepower and armor. You move up to those Tech 2 tanks. I like the fact that he's done this. I mentioned this to the other view. A lot of people in this kind of matchup go straight for Mongoose. That's really not that useful when you're dealing with a small number of units like this going backwards and forwards, and not necessarily huge swathes of armies that are going to sort of come in, fire at long range and move back. At this stage you want to be producing pillars. So Kircher definitely with the right idea there, and he's started an upgrade. Let's take a look, see if we can see what that is. Look at how much power that is using. So that looks like the gun upgrade. That will give him a nice advantage in the center of the map. And for the moment, it looks like Killer's actually yielding the center of the map. Obviously, he's been afraid because he's seen a few Tech 2 units on this side of the map. But now there's a few of them in the middle. And he needs to be careful. There's a lot of units now encroaching at the foot of his base. Suddenly, you get the feeling like Killer is looking slightly outmatched. Not producing, you see, and he's gone straight from Mongoose, and I don't think it's the right time yet. I mean, I suppose it's getting towards the time where it's worthwhile, but at least he has made that switch up. He's expended the mass, and he's trying to keep on a level. You can see a lot of pillars out now for Kircher, who's ahead of the game on that tech switch. Kircher aggressively moving forward now to the front of Killer's base, being as he's got the gun upgrade on the ACU. Wants to do as much damage as possible, and Killer looking incredibly isolated, has been caught with in the middle of an upgrade, and Lobos and pillars just raining all kinds of damage down on him. He's not going to make it out of there, and that is going to be him done. People may be wondering why he wouldn't cancel that upgrade and move back. To be honest, with the amount of units that's at the foot of his base, Kircher with the gun upgrade, I think that was going to be game over either way. So, Spiderpigs take the match 2-0 style, but I do have good news for you, because that's not exactly it. Just for fun, they did play the final match between Voodoo and Mag, so we shall watch that and see how it goes. But that was a 2-0 victory for the Spiderpigs. I did kind of think they would. They just it's a little bit of a dangerous combination, Kircher and Voodoo. So commiserations, Smörebröts. But as I say, this isn't a knockout tournament. This is merely the group stages. So there is every chance that they can recover from this and still go through to the final knockout section of the tournament. So you can see down here we've got Mag. He's going to be going UEF this time. Excuse me. And up here Voodoo also going UEF. And no surprises. The typical land first, air second for Voodoo. Incidentally, guys, if you haven't seen already, do check out the tournament page on the tournament section of the forums. You can see that there, if you look under the casting section, there is a link to the players. In fact, what I might start doing is I'm going to put the playlist link in the comments or the description for these videos, so you can watch all the other casts if you haven't seen them already and get a flavour of what's been going on in the tournament. Basically, there's 4 casters. There's me, myself, obviously me, myself, TA for Life, TJ, and Napalm. And they are actually in the tournament under the name of YouTube Stars, so do check their games out. We've had an interesting victory already in Pool 3, so going to be rooting for them, not biased at all, purely because they're fellow casters. But yeah, do check it out. So you see early land scouts going out for Mag. He's got a little bit of an idea of what's happening in the center of the field, but small army of light assault bots with a scout coming out for Voodoo. And that scout is going to hightail it out of there. Just taking pot shots at the assault bots, keeping them out of range. But Voodoo looks like he's got a number on this engineer, and looks like that's going to go down. So first casualty for Mag. An early bomber out for Voodoo. Another bomber as well. So wanting to score some hits on these engineers. I like that. And that's a mass point going down. So nasty little Brofester hit squad with light assault bots from Voodoo. There's all kinds of havoc. Oh, they're going to get a hit on this engineer as well. Oh, yes, they are. They all go down, however, to a crew of 3 strikers and a scout. But it's all, you know, so mech marines are absolutely, you know, to a penny. So absolutely worth it to take out those early engineers, because of course factor in travel time. It's not necessarily about resources at this stage of the game. It is of course about slowing down the expansion of your opponent, and it looks like Voodoo is doing a very nice job of that. And this is the formation I'm talking about. This is a much more efficient system for loading up T1 power gens at the back of your base. You can't just have bombers flying in and causing huge collateral damage with one bomb, taking out multiple power gens. So I applaud Voodoo for that. Got some nice templates going. These strikers being an absolute pain. They do a little run by into the back of Voodoo's base. Still both of them alive. Nice bomb there from that T1 bomber. Finally, Striker picks up the kill. So, but no, that's given Mag some information about the layout of Voodoo's base, how far along he is, and etc. Meanwhile, little engineer battle going on over here. One loses out to a bomber. A few more strikers coming in over on this right plateau, but Voodoo getting up a nice little forward manufacturing base. Mag also got his ACU into the middle. It's going to pick up that mass point. But there's a lot of production on the field now for both guys. I don't see any super early tech coming from either of them, which is pretty sensible. Imagine when you're facing Voodoo, I would not be teching early at all. I would be trying to throw everything at him, keep him busy. But relatively unchallenged on the right plateau at the moment. You've got to feel in terms of map control, Voodoo at the moment has the edge. Now moving forward with his ACU, Mag is going to get a point defense up. Himself a little bit of extra coverage. Looks like control is going to switch on the two plateaus. It's a mildly overwhelming force from Voodoo on the left plateau, and been pretty unchallenged on the right plateau now, Mag. But huge force amassing for Voodoo in the middle. And Mag has been forced to retreat with his ACU and is getting a lot of his engineers killed. He's been hoovering up this mass. And that's it's a little bit of a shame there for Mag. It's kind of unnecessary. But horrendous run by happening now by Voodoo. This could cause all kinds of havoc. It's a question of how many Lobos he's got in the mix. That does look like it's mostly strikers, although at the back you've got Lobos in here, but they've been cut off by the commander. Mag really needs to focus on the Lobos, as that's the main threat to his buildings, which he is now doing. So that could have been a lot worse than it actually was. These strikers won't do much damage, if any. Pick up an engineer kill or two. But in the meantime, that's forced Mag right back into his base and has yielded almost complete map control to Voodoo, and that is never a good situation. Mag taking his ACU out of his base, trying to assert some kind of dominance. About to square up against this sort of small alignment of troops from Voodoo. Voodoo's managed to pick up a hydrocarbon for himself, so he's definitely not hurting for power at the moment. I think at this point I wouldn't change with Mag for all the tea in China. But he's making a valiant push up on the right side, and he has made the tech switch. You can see a couple of pillars out for him now. But I just don't think he's got enough, and those Lobos will do exceptional amounts of damage if you get caught. Pillar managing to stay alive, but still absolutely no success in gaining control of that plateau. Mag coming back towards his base, but of course Pillar's out now for Voodoo, so pretty similar timing for both guys in terms of the tech switch. Nice shield gen out for Mag, that's going to give him some coverage. You can see Voodoo now got T2 on his commander, and he's just starting a point defense creep that looks like it's going straight into Mag's base. That's probably going to signify the end. He's got flanking maneuvers happening by large portions of T1 and T2 on both sides of his base. That's going to force his commander right back into the center of the base, which is going to yield the rest of the map once again to Voodoo, who's cancelled the operation on those tridents, the build triads. Build operation is starting them afresh in the hopes of pinning Mag back into his base. And horrible little run-bys happening from Voodoo now. Voodoo just marching his commander even further up. Mag, cheater. No, I don't think so. T1 PD going up with walls. Help thin out these extra units. Mag trying to focus them with his Lobos, but Lobos not surviving long enough. And now Voodoo switching up to the triads, and that is definitely signaling the end of Mag, who is well and truly beaten back into his base. So a pretty commanding show there from Voodoo. Commiserations, Mag, you fought rather well in that. But, like I say, Spiderpigs, very nasty looking team, and you've got to like them to get into the final division. Expecting them to go far in this tournament. But hope you enjoyed that, guys. me and my fellow casters will be back with more, but for now, that is me from the Rise of the Immortals, signing out.